So here I'm with Jordan Turner again, talking property management. Jordan's making real progress with his company, Albrecht Property Management. It's coming along. One of the things I did this morning for Jordan was I wrote a testimonial. And Jordan, testimonials are like printing gold. I mean, it's like a little leprechaun left you a pot of gold. Um, I ask people for my coaching, I ask them for testimonials, but what often happens is somebody will email me and say, Bruce, we did some coaching together. I just wanted you to know that you changed my life. I followed some of the things that we talked about, and it's really working, and I'm really grateful. And then what I do is I actually write that into a testimonial. I actually do it myself. And then I say, I put it in kind of the same words, but maybe I clean up the grammar a little bit, or sometimes the spelling, and comma, Bill Smith and Mary Smith, real estate investors. And then I send it back to them. I say, look, that was so nice. I turned it into a testimonial. Can I use it? And, 99.999% of the time, people say, yeah, sure. So you have to ask for permission. But if you ask people for testimonials, most people don't like to write very much, right? Yeah. So one of the things I'd ask you to do, and I did it for you this morning because, well, it's easy for me to do, and I meant it. I wouldn't write you a testimonial if I didn't think highly of you, right? Sure. So that you wouldn't have got one. You would have I would have just said hello. But those are really worthwhile. And if you have somebody's permission, then you can put them on your website. And in terms of writing out property management agreements, believe it or not, in my coaching agreement, I don't know if I did that with you, but in my coaching agreement, I'll put a few testimonials in there from clients that have said yes. And so when people are reading their coaching agreement, you pay me $1 million a month for coaching, or whatever it is, and then they'll read a couple of testimonials that I think might be relevant. So, and people just love that stuff, right?
Yep.
So you put it on your Facebook page, you put it on your website, you put it in your agreements. Okay. So the one that you got from me this morning, use it wherever you think it's appropriate.
Great, thank you.
And feel free to beat the hell out of it. I'm going to stop the recording just for a second. Okay. I'm going to pause it just for a second. I want to make sure I don't stop it. So we stopped the recording just for a moment to talk about a tenant who isn't paying rent at the moment, is behind. And what do you do about that? Well, it's a property manager's job to keep on top of that, obviously. And the first thing that I do, and I'm sure Jordan, you will do, is I ask people if they want to pay their rent. And if they say, well, I can't afford it, fair enough. Then rather than serving them the form, the eviction form right away, I say, well, look, we're not going to come after you for a month's rent. I mean, we're just not. But we'd like you to vacate. So maybe they will voluntarily just give you back the keys or pack their bags and leave. It saves you anywhere from 3 to 6 months in front of the rental tribunal in Ontario, right? So just ask them to leave. And basically, she's got $1,600. This person who remains nameless has $1,600 that she's benefited from without paying her rent.
Now, if she agrees to leave, how much time do you give her to move out?
Well, I would like her to move, immediately. But if she wants to stay for 2 weeks, I would agree to that. But if she says, look, I'm not moving out and I'm not paying rent, well, it's simple. Then you just give her the form. Is it an N4?
It's an N4, yeah.
Yeah, an N4 form, and we have to start the eviction process right away. Non-payment of rent is what it is. I'm sorry about that. But it's very, very tough these days for a lot of people. So generally speaking, I just, in more than half the cases, and your dad is very good at this too, more than half the cases, people just say, yeah, I can't afford it anymore. They give you back the keys or they vacate and give them a couple of weeks to find someplace else.
Yeah.
And that's easier. But if she doesn't agree to that on the 1st of September, which is coming up, give her the N4 form and we'll just go through the process. I don't get mad at people. I want to provide a very good environment for people who are tenants of mine, but I also want them to pay the rent. All right, so that's enough of that. All right, so let's talk about your agenda. It was a good agenda. I liked it. And the first thing that we wanted to talk about is commercial leasing and triple net leasing. But before we get there, I wanted to jump to number 3 on your list, if that's okay, which is negotiating property management agreements, and then go back to number 1, if that's okay with you.
Yep.
Because you're in a position now where you want to negotiate, more arrangements. And after we finish this, we're almost through. After we finish our little bit of coaching and whatever else, you and I are going to sit down together, and we're going to hammer out a property management agreement between you and me. Okay.
Yep.
And there you go. So negotiating property management agreements. When you ask me that question, do you mean what are the key points to sell your services, or what are the key things that you should bring to a negotiation? What was really the thinking behind
I think more than anything, it's just narrowing down specific skills required in negotiating, and then of course like the areas of a property management agreement that you want to make sure you always cover in negotiations when you're starting that agreement with an owner.
One of the most fundamental things that all of us need to learn if we're going to be doing a lot of sales and negotiating is to develop a BATNA, BATNA position. You know what that stands for, right?
Yeah, best alternative to a negotiated agreement.
Exactly. So if you take my point of view on this, is when I go into negotiate for a coaching agreement, for a sale, or whatever it might be that I'm involved with, I try and remind myself to do that before every negotiation, because it kind of strengthens your confidence in yourself, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say I was trying to sell you a piece of land, and we're talking about the zoning and the possible uses and the price and everything else. My BATNA, my best alternative to a negotiated agreement, is to sell to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's obvious. I mean, that's a pretty simple thing. So the best alternative to a negotiated agreement would be a sale to somebody else. How does that strengthen my hand in a negotiation? Well, it does, because what happens is, it gives me, like I said, the confidence that if this doesn't work out, it just clears the deck for something that will. So there are 3 answers that you can get to any question you ask: yes, no, or maybe. And yes is obviously the best. I'd like to do some property management work for you, Mr. Turner. Here's all the reasons why I think we're a good fit. But say you turn me down, you say, well, you're charging 6, 7, 8%. I only want to pay 5%, and we're too far apart. Goodbye, Bruce. Well, that just clears my calendar for somebody who will appreciate me and will pay me properly, so I can give them proper service. So when you think about the BATNA and the best alternative to negotiated agreement, you want to think to yourself, and what I'll say in this imaginary situation where I'm trying to sell you, if you say, well, I'm not sure, Bruce, whether we should hire you as our property manager, I'll say, you'll hear me do it as we work together, hopefully for some time to come. You'll hear me say, you know what, Mr. Jordan, I'm going to take that as a no, because a maybe isn't really going to serve you or me. And it's okay. No, it's okay. I mean, I understand you may have somebody that you prefer. Fair enough. You go ahead and sign with him or her, and, I'll take that as a no. Then, about half the time, somebody will say, well, I really don't want to say no. Then I'll say, okay, we'll say yes. So you can turn it around. Mm-hmm. There's something else that the BATNA position can help you with in this in particular. And we talked about it before, right? Which is a wedge product. Remember that?
Yeah.
And for property management, a wedge product might be, okay, you don't want to hire me as your property manager. You've got Bill the moron, who's doing a horrible job. The tenants hate him. The properties look terrible, but you're only paying him 5% instead of paying me 6 or 7 or 8. Okay. So the dumb client says, I'd rather pay a lousy property manager 5% than a great property manager like Jordan or Bruce, 5, 6, 7, 8%. Well, 6, 7, 8% of the rent. Okay, fair enough. So a BATNA would also be, okay, again, I'm selling you, Jordan. Okay, Mr. Turner, yeah, you're going to stick with Bill the moron. Okay. But there's something else I do. I have a couple of workies working for me. And if you get into any trouble, you need a little bit of interior paint, you need a sign put up somewhere, a tenant's toilet is plugged, rather than call a plumber, my guy can go in there and plunge the damn thing. And we have a good team. So keep me on your Rolodex, keep me on your top 10, your speed dial. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're going to do something like that, but I think you could probably, without really straining your mind, you could probably think of 20 people, plumbers, electricians, window cleaners, painters. I mean, I think you could have a list of 20 people that you could probably call on. And so one of the things I was hoping you would do is you would get a piece of paper and think about all the things that a landlord might need, painting, plumbing, electrician, signs, they need signs, I don't know, landscaping, snow removal. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And I would have I say a piece of paper, but these days it might be part of your Facebook page or part of your and you don't have to have these guys on staff. I mean, these are just people who they would bill you, say, $45 an hour or $35 an hour, plumber probably more, and you would mark them up and sell them to people, even if they're not property management clients of yours. Am I making any sense?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So one of the pieces of homework I wanted you to do was literally try and think of probably 20 different things a landlord might need. We're not talking about replacing HVAC systems on 30-story buildings. That's a different level, right? We're talking about the small repairs that everybody is frustrated because they can't find people to do it.
Yeah.
And that's a profit center for you. Like if a handyman is charging you $30 an hour, you're going to charge him out at $40 or $45 an hour. You're going to make 10 or 15 bucks. If a plumber's charging you, I don't know, $85 an hour, you're going to charge him out at 105. I mean, because these people need it. And so in a way, you can co-op not only the landlord, but even the landlord's property manager.
Yeah.
And so a best alternative to negotiate agreement when you go into a negotiation isn't necessarily just walk away and say, fuck off to the client. It isn't that. It's that, okay, well, listen, here's I would actually have a sheet of paper. I would give them, here's all the services that you can just buy, a la carte. Do you know the term a la carte?
Yeah, it has to do with restaurants and eating.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a la carte service, right?
Yeah.
And so, don't hire me, but if you get into a jam on any of your properties, you need to tidy something up. You just have somebody leaves a place a mess. You should have cleaners on that list, right? So I would like you to actually give it a shot. Think of at least 20. I don't care. It could be 20. It can't be 100. But see if you can come up with 20 or maybe at most 30 services that where people. Now you don't put their names and phone numbers and email addresses on, because then Bill the moron will use it, right?
Yeah.
These are your people that you can put into place to help. And then once the landlord gets to know you better, the property owner gets to know you better, then I suspect Bill the moron might get the boot, and you might get the property management.
Replace them. Yeah. Once you show your value.
Yeah, so that's a wedge product there. And so you think about the BATNA, in your BATNA is the wedge product. And if he's not interested in that, or she's not interested in that, then you just walk away. But even when I walk away from a client, I never burn the bridge. I just say, well, look, you keep Bill the moron, but if you ever run into any issues, I'm available, and you'd be surprised at how many people will call you within a year or two.
Now I know like anchoring plays a role in selling for ticket items. Do you think anchoring can play a role in establishing a percentage of management fees?
Yes, in my coaching agreements, you'll often see something like, forgive me for being up and down because I screwed up my leg, but you'll often see something like this in my coaching agreements. Where can you see that?
Yeah,
Say, I'll actually put in the coaching agreement, you know, your investment in coaching is $1,750 a month, crossed out. It's called strike through in Microsoft Word, and it'll show $1,500, right?
yeah,
So in your property, have you drafted up a property management agreement yet?
I haven't, no.
Well, that's another exercise for you.
Okay,
I think that would be really useful to do. And if you want to do the first draft, you can just crib it off the internet, right? What goes into a property management agreement? You okay?
oh yeah, just one moment. Good, you? He's not, I'm just in that meeting right now. Okay, sorry. No problem. I will.
So in your property, oh, sorry, can we keep going?
Oh yeah, it's just Dale and Viraj.
Oh, how nice.
They say hi.
Okay, good. Say hi back. So in your property management agreement, I'll just go back in here. What's really, really, really important is that you and I are going to do a property management agreement that is going to be the best of its kind. And you remember we talked about proper property management revenue streams.
Yeah.
Okay. Oops, sorry. Where do I have them all? I thought they were all here. Let me just, I'll just grab this. And, oh yeah, I've got it over here. Sorry. I'm sharing the wrong screen, I think. Seems like I'm doing okay standing up, but if I were to sit down, I'd be screaming in pain from the, tore my ACL. So I think I sent you this, Jordan, and if not, I'll just send it again. But proper property management, and here is my list of potential revenue streams, right? You remember this?
Yeah.
So you should grab a property management agreement off the internet, just grab a free one. But what they'll show on the revenue side for a property manager is much, much, much more restricted. This has to go in there, right? So your management fee, your markup on for your management fee for Airbnb, if you do some of that, your leasing fees, your admin fees on all expenses and services and bills that you pay 15%, which I've seen your invoices for Albrecht to us, and you're doing that, right?
Yep.
Which is good. Although I'd prefer if it was 5% for me, but I'm just kidding. It was 15%. If you're doing tech or multimedia packages, if you're doing percentage rents, surcharge on building inspections, if you're generating sponsorship revenues, almost nobody thinks about, but you can name buildings after famous people and they'll pay you for it.
Yep.
Okay. We did one for the University of Ottawa when I was there with Paul Desmarais from Power Corporation, and he paid, I can't remember whether it's $35 or $45 million to name a University of Ottawa building.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and some of that should go to you. Anyway, I won't go through it again, but what I'd like you to do is go back to this document, and you still have it, right?
Yep.
Okay. You're a good student. You don't forget things, and so your property management agreement will have far more revenue opportunities. But if you think about that, if somebody looks at that, a landlord looks at that and sees all the different things that you can do for them, then they kind of go, oh, wow, I didn't know property managers could, help me sell a building, help me buy a building, help me animate a building to increase its income, all of that stuff. So it looks like he or she, they are paying you more money, but they're paying you more money because they're making more money.
Yep.
Right. So your property management agreement is going to be a little longer than normal, but I think that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And it'll just tell people that this is a very different group. All right. So now let's just keep going here. All right. In terms of negotiating, what do you think your strongest forte is in terms of your presentation to somebody when you're selling them on, Albrecht?
What's my strongest?
Yeah, I mean, if you're
like
somebody you didn't know, I saw one of your signs and I called you and said, look, I'm not really happy with Bill the Moron, my property manager. Tell me more about yourself. What is your 2-minute elevator pitch?
I'd say that my strongest area and what I bring to the table above and beyond any other property manager is the fact that I know the ins and outs of building a home and, you know, a building from the ground up. And so I have access to any labor that's required, any trade that's required without delay.
Okay. But you didn't mention anything on the revenue side.
On the revenue side?
Yeah, animation.
Oh, to help them generate more revenue with their property.
Exactly. My goodness. I can't believe I don't have it in there. Huh. All right. So I've got another, you don't mind doing a little bit more homework, huh?
Nope.
Okay. So I'm going to find somewhere. What I'd like you to do, which will really help you in your negotiating, I'd like you to do a YouTube video. The first one is unlisted because you might screw it up.
Okay.
It's a 2-minute or less elevator pitch. Okay.
Okay.
And you do it, you know, you can just sit in a room with a nice background and say, hi, my name's Jordan Turner from Albrecht Property Management. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about us. And I'm going to show you on YouTube something that is really great. So before you do your elevator pitch, I want you to do something called a message map.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of a message map?
I have not.
All right. So this is a guy, his name's Carmen Gallo. He's a Forbes contributor, and it's a bit corny. You know, he's a pitch man, but you know, in sales, frankly, we all are to some extent, right?
Mm-hmm.
So before you do your elevator pitch, you're going to do a message map, and you're going to put that on YouTube unlisted. I'm going to look at that. I'll comment on it, and then you're going to do your elevator pitch. Okay, so it's a 2-step process.
Okay.
All right, so it's corny, but it's very good. So watch this.
I'm going to show you how to pitch anything in 15 seconds. And we're going to do so with
Can you hear it okay?
Yep.
the help of a great tool called a message map. A message map is the visual display of your story on one page. So for this exercise, you're going to need a notepad, a tablet computer, or a good old-fashioned whiteboard. And we're also going to use the example of a real company called Lush. Lush is a global soap store. I believe they're in about 45 countries. They make fantastic handmade fresh soap. That lemon smells great. I don't have any financial interest in this company, but I know the messaging really, really well. I've talked to the founders before, and in order to create a really good message map, you got to know the story. So let's start with step one, creating what I call a Twitter-friendly headline. The Twitter-friendly headline is the one overarching message that you're trying to communicate to your customer, the one thing you want people to know about your brand or your product. I've already taken the liberty of filling this out. Lush makes handmade soaps and cosmetics. So again, based on my understanding and my understanding of the message, I think that's the one thing they want you to know. Lush makes handmade soaps and cosmetics. If that's all you know, it tells you a lot, and it also fits well within a Twitter post of 140 characters, so keep it short. But now let's fill in the rest of the message map with 3 or at most 4 supporting points. So again, based on what I understand of the messaging so far, I would say fresh is very important to them, and we'll talk about that in a second. Fresh. The other sub-point or supporting point I would make is environmentally, and I'll shorten it, environmentally friendly. And the third point is ethical campaigns. They support a lot of ethical campaigns globally and in their various communities where the locations are held. So Lush makes handmade soaps and cosmetics. There's 3 reinforcing points. They're fresh, they're environmentally friendly, and they support ethical campaigns. Now let's see how this would work out in the real world. I'm going to use a stopwatch for this. Let's assume, hypothetically, customer walks into a Lush store. A sales associate might say something like this. Hi, welcome to Lush. We make handmade soaps and cosmetics. Everything you see in the store is fresh, it's environmentally friendly, and part of the proceeds go to support ethical campaigns in our community. Take a look around, enjoy yourself. 15 seconds. In 15 seconds, I gave you the broad story. If that's all you know about Lush, this actually tells you quite a bit. But now let's go one step further. Let's extend the conversation somewhat, maybe to a 30-second pitch. You're going to have to support these points for a longer conversation. So under fresh, you might add just a couple of bullet points like manufactured daily, shipped the next day. Under environmentally friendly, you can put something like unpackaged so that the plastic doesn't end up in landfills. Or you might put ingredients not tested on animals. These sub-points, the supporting points for each of your 3 key messages, need to be very specific. They need to be examples, data, statistics, or even stories. And under ethical campaigns, you might add 1 or 2 of the campaigns that the Lush brand supports, either globally or locally in communities. So there you go. This is a message map. It is one of the most powerful tools in communication. It works each and every time, even for very complex products or concepts. I know because I've worked with leaders who have incredibly complex products to talk about or to sell. In fact, the more complex your product, the more you need the message map. Because you as a leader, you need to communicate the benefits of your product in a way that is simple, clear, and concise. The message map is your winning ticket.
So not bad, huh?
Oh,
So, this would be something you would do. Hey, my name's Jordan Turner. I'm the founder of Albrecht Property Management. We provide above average property management services. We keep your tenants longer, happier, paying more. We know how to animate your buildings, which means to drive the revenues up in many different ways. And on the construction and renovation side, I have been involved in construction and renovation ever since I was a little boy. I've worked on over 24 different buildings, building them from the ground up, homes, commercial, mixed use buildings, you name it. Albrecht is your ticket.
perfect.
That probably took about 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have to work on that a little bit more. That was just me, winging it a little bit. But
Yeah.
it's very powerful. And then if you build a big company like Dan Doré has, with now 900 doors and lots of employees, that message map recorded on YouTube, you'll make that public once you've done it a few times and you're happy with it. Once your coach has gone through it, right? You make that public. So you're going to have 2 things on YouTube and then you can embed it in your website. You can embed it, I think, in Facebook, your Facebook page, wherever you might need it. You can put it on TikTok. You can put it on Instagram. Got to be careful on TikTok. They don't like salesy things there. So it might not go on TikTok, but it can go on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn is important too. All right. You can be salesy. Now, I was going to show you if I can find it. Maybe I have it here. I don't know. Because I did one for myself when I started out with my coaching practice. See if I can find it. And I used to make all my students do it as well. I don't know if I have a Prof. Bruce one here. Maybe not. Just give me another minute. I apologize. Maybe in my work program introduction, but it'd be worthwhile seeing it, how I did it. Well, I'm not sure I'll be able to find it. I don't want to record this forever. Well, I'll just have to look for it another time. Let me show you though another great elevator pitch on YouTube, just so you get a sense of what the elevator pitch might look like. Maybe I have it here.
It was my second week of college and I was out of shampoo. So I took an Uber.
No, I apologize. There's one that is fantastic. It was done by a kid in Utah. Maybe he took it down because he's probably a CEO of a major company now. But you can look on YouTube. There's lots of good 2-minute elevator pitches, you know. So
Okay.
I did a message map for myself as a coach. And then I probably could find it if I just spent another 5 minutes on it. But then I did an elevator pitch, and that got me a lot of my first early customers. I don't use it anymore because, frankly, if I had any more coaching clients, my head would fall off, and you wouldn't have a coach anymore. But those are really good things to do. So there's 3 pieces of homework that you can do, hopefully in the next month. Do a message map, do an elevator pitch, and I will send you. I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to waste your time and my time looking for it. But what I'll do is I will send you, some pointers on how to make a great elevator pitch. I can't believe I can't find that. I mean, that's ridiculous, Firestone. Just give me a second here. I'm going to try one more time. Elevator. Oh, Bruce, I'm looking in the wrong document. I'm getting mad at myself now. No, I guess I don't have it in here. All right, I'm going to give up, but I will send you that, and it's quite. I mean, I put a lot of time and effort and research into it, right?
Okay.
So so you're going to do the message map, the elevator pitch, and then the property management agreement, first draft of each of those, and I'll help you with the second draft. And once we're happy with them, you can release them. Then
Okay.
Don't forget, in the property management agreement, the 20 or 30 Workey services will be in that agreement. It'll be in it, so that if somebody says, I'm not hiring you as a property management, okay, we'll just cross out the first 3 pages and look at the page 4. You should at least keep me on your speed dial for that. All right.
Yep.
All right. So I think we've got that. Now, if you're having a detailed discussion with somebody who's thinking about hiring you, then one of the things that I think would help you sell would be a site visit to one or more of his buildings or her buildings. And what you can do these days is you can do a site visit without ever leaving your office. You can do it on Zoom, right?
Yep.
And so I do that a lot. Like I have clients in Long Beach, California, and Idaho, and South Florida. I mean, I got clients, obviously I can't jump on a plane every time I want to speak to them. So when I'm being interviewed as a potential coach, I'll say, well, tell me about your portfolio. So one of the things that you do when you're negotiating for an agreement is you ask questions. And so there might be, maybe another piece of homework, if you don't mind. See if you can come up with 5 or 6 questions that, that JT can ask the property owner. So it's not just you selling him, right?
Yep.
It's, them selling you too, but you don't call it that. All right. And one of the questions would be, so tell me more about your portfolio. Okay, so do you want to write that down? Tell me more about your portfolio. Which is the worst performing property you have? And why is it the worst performing property you have? And then, of course, there's some other questions that you could ask, like, what are your goals? You're happy with your property the way it is now, your portfolio? You want to grow it bigger? Do you want to make it smaller? Because some people might have 50 properties and say, to hell with that, I'm going to keep these 10 and the other 40 are going to sell. Well, that's a huge deal, because you're going to know realtors who can work with you, right, to sell those 40 properties. Oh, I can sell those for you. So there's lots of, whether it's getting bigger or smaller or staying the same. So there's probably 5 or 6 questions that you should ask them. See if you can come up with a list, okay? And I gave you, I think, 3. Now, so what I would do if we were on the call together, and again, you're the property owner and I'm Jordan, and I'm the would-be property manager, I'd say, well, I'll just be Bruce and you'll be Jordan. You're the property owner and I'm the prospective property manager. I'd say, so Mr. Turner, tell me about your portfolio. Oh yeah, you got 17 properties. Wow. Are they all commercial, all residential, a bit of a mixed use? Okay, very cool. Tell me about the worst and they'll know instantly the worst one, right? If you had 17 people working for you and I asked you who's the worst performer, you'd know right away.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, that's Bill the moron, right? So you ask them, what's the worst one? Oh, what's the address? And then you go on Google Maps, and you can see a hell of a lot on Google Maps, right? You get a look at the neighborhood, you get a look at the streetscape, you can sort of look behind into the backyard. And if it's a home, so let's say it's a home, you go, oh, that's really interesting. So why is it poorly performing? Well, I got one tenant in there. It's a bungalow. It doesn't make very much money. He's been there forever. And we've got rent control in Ontario, so I can't really put the rent up very much. I'm not sure what to do with it. Well, you could say to your client or would-be client, well, maybe you sell it, that might be something. Sometimes, by the way, I should mention this to you, sometimes when you're selling a property where you have a long-term tenant, you can, as a realtor, say, look, why don't we sell it with vacant possession? And the owner will say, well, I can't get vacant possession. How would I get vacant possession? I said, there is a way to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is to look for a buyer who wants to move in himself or herself. And that can make $150,000 difference in the price, right? Because look at 140 William, where we have 2 tenants who've been there for more than a decade, I think, and the rents they pay are very, very low. So
yep.
You can sell something with vacant possession because a prospective buyer is going to move in, and maybe if it's a guy, he moves in with his family and he moves his mother-in-law in the other unit. Now he's got vacant possession, and at some point, if he decides to renovate that, he can and re-rent it at much higher rents.
Yep.
So by asking them questions, you're now turning it from a presentation into a conversation, and that's much more powerful.
Okay.
I did have another point to make on that. So you're asking them questions, you're looking at it. Okay, now you're looking at that property, and he says, well, I'd like to sell, but I can't sell it because the rents are too low. You can talk about ways to work around that. But if he wants to keep it, you could talk about, the Alili solution of putting, 3 micro suites in the basement, or putting a workshop in the backyard, doing something to bring the income up. And then he'll say, that's really interesting. How much would a workshop cost? And he said, well, you could buy them from, for example, North Country Sheds for $12,000 and fix them up a little bit, maybe $20,000, $25,000, and rent them for $700 a month, or maybe a bit more. Who knows? All right. So you get into an animation discussion. If it's a commercial building, obviously, then there'd be different types of animations. You'd ask him, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, if he understands what a triple net lease is, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I think you've got the basics now, and with some additional documentation, I think you'll probably be quite successful. Have you got any other clients other than Don and myself?
I haven't, no. I was kind of holding off on that because I was undecided as to whether I wanted to travel coming up in the beginning of September. And I decided to kind of just push that back and wait and kind of work on this and develop a client base first. and then train someone down the road who can kind of cover me for a week if I choose to travel or not?
Yeah, I think that your main job, Jordan, will be to, get, create an organization that actually makes you the guy who works on the business instead of in the business.
Yeah.
Like I'm a sole practitioner as a realtor, and not exclusively. I have some people who help me out, as you know, but pretty much I'm on my own. So I'm the cook, the bottle washer, and the dishwasher, and everything else. But you're younger, and think about Dan Dory. He works on his business now. He doesn't work in the business.
Yeah.
He's managing 900 doors, which is quite a lot. And don't forget to use negative cost selling. Look, if you hire me at 6, 7, 8%, by doing all the things that we've talked about, I'm going to more than pay for that, many times over. Talk about all your animation strategies. Talk about your property management skills. I think that's really important. Sorry, did I say property management? I meant project management skills.
Yeah.
Because you could build a commercial building. And that's really something. Talk about buying and selling. We'll help you buy the right properties, and we'll help you to sell the dogs in your portfolio, right? And the other thing, of course, you already know, very, very important will be testimonials and word of mouth. Like once you have probably, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 property management clients, the rest will come just through reading Facebook, looking at one of your signs, seeing a video, somebody saying, look, my property management manager sucks. Oh, well, I'm using Jordan Turner. He's terrific.
Yeah.
All right, so we beat that to death. All right, let's talk about triple net leasing. And this I am prepared for. And I'll share my screen with you, okay? So commercial leasing, and by the way, in Belleville, triple net leasing is very tough to sell.
Okay.
So, I'm going to talk about triple net leasing. I've done lots of it. And if I was RioCan, which is a huge organization, they would never, ever, ever put into one of their shopping plazas somebody on a gross lease. They just wouldn't. They would just say, get out of here. But when you're a small landlord like me, and probably most of the clients that you might have in Belleville, if that's your focus, it's going to be hard to get triple net leases in place.
Okay.
It may take me a couple of goes to get that done. So a triple net lease is different from a gross lease. A triple net lease means the tenant pays a base rent, which is sometimes called a minimum rent, and they pay additional rent. In the additional rent, the reason it's called triple net is in the additional rent, you have property taxes, their share of property taxes, their share of operating expenses, and their own utilities. And so what you're probably going to end up with in Belleville for most of the commercial leases that you do will be sort of semi-gross. All right. And by semi-gross, I mean, we will have some success, I think, in getting tenants, commercial tenants in Belleville who will pay a base rent or minimum rent plus utilities. But to get them to the point where they're going to pay that and their share of property taxes and their share of operating expenses is very difficult.
Okay.
Because they just don't understand what operating expenses are, and they don't really understand what they're signing on for. But a true triple net commercial lease is just that. It's net of operating costs, utilities, and property taxes. All right. So what are the key things in proper commercial leasing? Number one, I do offers to lease, which also act as lease. What a lot of commercial landlords do in Toronto, New York, London, Shanghai, is they do an offer to lease, which sets out most of the terms and conditions of the lease. And it's usually, 6 or 7 or 8 pages long. Then they go to their attorney and they ask the attorney to turn that into a full-fledged lease, which it could be as much as 80 or 85 pages. what I have done for many years, and you got to remember, at one point we had a 1,000,000+ square feet of office and commercial space, so we had a larger portfolio than we do now. But when we did that, I would write up an offer to lease that also acted as a lease. So my offers to lease, acting as a lease, might be 6 or 8 or 10 pages long. And if you're going to do a commercial lease at some point, you reach back to me. I've got 1,000,000 of these on my computer. I'll send you samples, okay?
Okay.
And so the offer to lease is kind of like a deal points memo. It lays out, the term, how many years or months the lease is going to be, what area they're taking up in the building, what is the price they're paying, which is usually dollars per square foot per year, plus HST in Ontario. Are they paying for parking, signage, whatever else might be there? And you specify the base rent, all right? And then on top of that, if it's a net lease, they're going to pay the operating costs, the property taxes, the utilities. But here's where RioCan and the others, they make out like bandits. They also charge them admin fees, like, the 15% admin fee that I want you to charge your clients. They also charge their property management fees back to their tenants. So if they're hiring you, it's not a cost to them because the tenants are paying that.
Okay.
Believe it or not, they'll put in their operating expenses, their accounting and bookkeeping fees. It's incredible. They'll put in their management fees, right? That's for their senior management. I mean, these operating costs are like, they often can be more than the base rent. They put in maintenance and repairs. They'll put in a percentage rent. You remember what that is, right? That's a percentage. Okay, a percentage rent is percentage of revenues. So let's say Burroughs Building, we had a restaurant, and the restaurant was well. I'll stop sharing this for a moment, and let's just boot up a spreadsheet for a second. So I'll share this screen, and let's assume, just as for fun, put the date in here, August 29, 2023. We're going to call it restaurant. Restaurant X. Triple net lease. All right, let's just fool around with this. All right. So the area, we're going to say they're taking up 5,000 square feet of space, and that is their net area. What do I mean by net area? It means it excludes common area. Maybe there are bathrooms in the corridor, maybe there's some corridors, maybe there's some columns going through the area. So typically a gross up factor for common area, because somebody's got to pay for the common area, is typically anywhere from 12% to some of these shopping areas could be 20% or more. All right, so if your gross up factor was 12%, it means that the area that they're paying for is 5,000 times 1 plus 12%, or 5,600 square feet. This is how landlords make out like bandits. And if they're paying if the common area is 20%, then it gets ridiculous. Watch this, times 1 plus, and I'll send you this spreadsheet after we finish. 6,000 square feet. Right? So that's a huge difference, right? So in the lease, they'll say that their net area is 5,000 square feet, but they're actually paying for the common area as well, their share of the common area. So they're actually paying on significantly more space. And that means your tenants have to be careful, because if they think their space is 5,600 square feet and they tell their designer it's 5,600 square feet, when they actually get in, they measure the interior space, it's only 5,000. Do you understand?
Yep.
All right. So that's area. So we're going to say base rent And typical for we'll do a sort of a bellable thing. Typical might be, I don't know, $26 per square foot per year. All right, that's sort of typical. So the base rent is equal to 26 times what?
Times the 5,600.
Ah, got it right. You're so smart. We'll assume it's this, all right? So that's per year. Very good. So you would think that, you know, oh, I'm paying 26 on 5,000, but if you read the lease, they're paying on the grossed up area. All right. So let's just look at that. So that equals per month. All right. Then what we have is we have their OPEX, their operating expenses, their share of property taxes, their share of utilities, or their own utilities, if it's separately metered, the property management costs, accounting costs, repairs, and maintenance, etc. All right, so they're paying a hell of a lot of other things, right? All right, so let's do that. And let's assume that on this building, that's let's say $17. Oops. Okay. So so this is, again, you're going to go like this times 5,600. So that's pretty friggin' expensive, but that's what it is, right? That's
Yep.
why obviously tenants prefer gross leases, because then you know they might escape some of this. All right. But as a property manager, you're trying to balance, can we get the tenant in? Can we get the tenant in paying triple net rent? If we can't, can we get it somewhere between gross and triple net, or maybe semi-gross? All right. Oops. All right. Okay, so now, so we'll do a subtotal. Well, now this restaurant is paying $20,000 a month, but wait, it gets worse for them and better for the landlord. What is a percentage rent? It is a percentage. Typically, it would be 6%. 6% of sales. All right. In other words, when they sell more, you know, food and beverage, the landlord's going to make some more money. But wait a second. What are their sales going to be? All right. To answer that question, typically for restaurants, they have to keep their overhead to 10%, their occupancy costs. They have to keep their overhead or occupancy costs to 10% of volume or less. So in other words, it means they, in order to pay $20,000 per month in rent, it means they have to sell 20,000 times 12 divided by 10% per year. So they need to have about 2.4, maybe 2.5 million in sales, or you shouldn't rent it to them because they'll go broke. So if somebody says, look, I can sell $800,000 worth of beer and pizza here, they can't afford to pay, you know, 20,000 a month in revenues. You with me on that?
Yep.
So let's assume that they say, oh yeah, we can do that, no problem. So we can afford that. Good. So what percentage rent is going to be is every month, the restaurant is going to pay the landlord 6% of their sales, which works out to 144,000 per year. That is a huge deal for the landlord. That's a huge profit maker for the landlord.
That's fantastic.
It's fantastic. So that's, but you know, with tenants, believe it or not, I actually go through this with them. I don't leave them doubting things. I'll do a spreadsheet like that and I'll work with them and I'll show them this and I'll say, look, if you think you could do $1 million or $1.5 million here, it's not going to work for you. You should go somewhere else.
Yep.
It's really good space. It's going to be expensive, but it's also going to allow you to flourish. And there you go. Now, I can tell you that restaurants in Ottawa, you know, pubs or sports bars, they typically in Ottawa, I don't know about Belleville because I don't know it, are 3 million per year in volume and more. All right, so they can afford this kind of rent. Okay, that's Ottawa. So I don't know what it is in Belleville. It probably would be lower, but it might not be. But if you can do 3 million or more and you're paying, you know, 20,000 a month in rent, you're going to do just fine because your occupancy costs then are going to be, you know, quite a bit less. All right,
Okay.
less than 10%. But I'll give you an example. I don't know if you know what the big rig is in Ottawa. The big rig, that was Chris Phillips. I don't know if you know who Chris Phillips is. He played for the Senator. And his nickname when he played for the Senators was the Big Rig because he's a big guy, right? And I'll just see if I can show you. So this is his first location on Queensview Drive. You can sort of see it here. It's called the Big Rig. It's got a good menu and really good beer. It's quite big. And I'll just go back to the spreadsheet. In his first year, he did 6 million.
Wow.
Yeah. And we do not have a lot of sports bars in Ottawa doing that. I think from what I know, there might be a couple, maybe. I don't know if there's any other than him, but he did 6 million. In fact, he told me it was I better save this. I'll go back here, sorry. I'll save it in your file. And like I'll send it to you. But after this little lecture that we're doing together is over, you know, you're going to know, you're going to know a lot more about commercial leasing than anybody in Belleville, I would suspect. And in fact, many people in North America, because realtors don't really know much, and most property managers don't know how to do it properly either. So you'll be way ahead of the game. And this is why I want you to make sure that in your message map and in your elevator pitch and the other things that you're doing, you know, you are really making sure that, you know, your education counts for a lot. Your education is not just learning from me, obviously, but your experience is fantastic. All right, let's go into coaching. Find Jordan. All right, so there we go. So that's kind of what a commercial lease looks like. Now, there's some other things that you know, you would give some thought to in a lease, right? For example, tenant improvements, right? And you would want to have in a list, you know, what are the tenant improvements, and tenant pays for what, and the landlord pays for what. So most of the big commercial landlords will not let tenants do their own work. They'll use their own contractors, their own suppliers. And, you know, a fit up for a restaurant, what do you think it costs these days to fit up a restaurant?
Well, I don't know. I have no idea. I have no experience in that, but millions.
Well, I'm
Depending
gonna
on the
say
size.
it's about $150 per square foot minimum, right? Which means that, and this one is based on the net area. So this would be, which would mean, you know, that would be a minimum. If it's if I tell you how much the big rig cost for the tenant improvements, I can tell you that because he put in an actual, you know, brew pub, right? Like they actually have these huge tanks and they make the beer right there. And his fit up cost was,
Yeah, that's crazy.
so if you could do that, and you probably could, and I'm gonna go 175 these days, it's really expensive. Oh God, I'm gonna go higher. That would be kind of the minimum, I think, today, over $1 million. And Chris, now, he's a former NHL player, he can afford it.
Yeah.
But even for an NHL player, you know, $5 million is still $5 million. Now, it didn't matter because the sales were 6 million. Right. And what he told me after his first year, he said, Bruce, we're going to lower that. We're actually intentionally going to do less marketing and less promotion and fewer events. We want to get our sales down to around 5 million because it would, you know, be lineups out the door. The kitchen was overrun. You know, it was hard to keep employees because it was too busy.
Mhm.
I mean, there's such a thing as being too busy, right? So I think they are now at a kind of a run rate of around 5 million. Which is where he wanted to be. All right. Okay. Now, so if the tenant improvements were costing $1 million, then you have to know how much of that is being paid by the tenant and how much of that will the landlord contribute. The landlord could contribute, you know, cash or free rent. With Jennifer Putman, we did not contribute cash, we're contributing free rent.
Okay.
Because cash is kind of short, as you know, right now.
Yeah.
But it could be some cash and some free rent, or all free rent and no cash, or all cash and no free rent. You know, you know. And there's typically there's a difference between a free rent period and a fit up period. So even if you weren't giving a tenant any free rent, you might give them, say, 3 months or 4 months to fit up their space. All right.
Yep.
And that would be free, typically, except they pay their utilities. But as you know, I'm sure, in entrepreneurship, there is no, what I've just described is what RioCan would do, for example, what I've tried to do. But everything in our business is subject to negotiation, right? And so this is your goal as a property manager representing your landlord. But what you might do, and here's a problem that I'll point out to you, that folks in smaller towns and even some larger cities don't know what I don't know if you understand that, but if I were trying to find a tenant for you know, Dale and Virage, you know, I would not advertise the space as $26 per square foot per year, triple net, because the average, like Jennifer Putman, for example, she would have no idea what the hell that means. Oh,
Yeah.
$26 a year for my space, great, I'll sign up. No, that's per square foot, and she wouldn't understand net area, gross up factor, common area, none of that. Wouldn't understand OPEX. You know, it would be very, very difficult to explain, and you might not. You know, there's some spaces on Front Street, maybe not so much anymore, but that were vacant for 2 years.
Yeah,
You know, those engineers, what are they called? Triple something, I can't remember. We use them on our property.
one moment, Bruce.
What's it called? What are they called?
Okay. Window cleaners here.
Okay, so you understand, so what I would do is, I would say, if I were advertising this space in a small town, and maybe even in a bigger town, Toronto or Ottawa, I might say, you know, great space at 7,900, whoops, 7,900 per month. Plus HSD available now. Must budget for operating expenses in addition to those. So if I were advertising, I would probably look at this number up here, which is the, oh, that was the wrong number. Oh, shit. So yeah, I'm screwing up. I didn't sleep much last night because of the pain of my torn ACL. Every time I turn over, I scream with pain. I'll wake up my wife. So I would advertise it something like this. You know, hey, listen, we've got a great spot for a restaurant or some other kind of store. It's available at around just over $12,000 a month plus HSD, but don't forget you also have to budget for your operating expenses and utilities. Does it make any sense?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
No, geez, I always get that wrong. And then you can always do, you know, a gross lease or a semi-gross lease. And what I'm going to end up doing in Delville will be, in terms of a semi-gross lease, is what I'll do in Belleville is I'll end up with, say, just using these numbers, $12,100. So it's 20,000 a month, right?
Yeah.
So what I might end up with is, 20,000 per month. And that's at 17. So what I would probably do there is I would probably go down a little bit. So typically utilities could be, $5 per square foot for utilities. And if you work that out, and that's $5 times, we do use the gross up area here, 600. So it might be 28,000 per year. Which is equal to this divided by 12 per month. Oops, I screwed up. Nope. Oh, fuck. And per month. So I might do something like this. I might go, I'll charge them 20,000 a month less utilities. So I'll charge them 17,000, but they have to pay. I spelled it wrong again. Almost good. Okay, now why would I do this? Why would I do something like that? Why would I back out the utilities and make them pay the utilities?
I'm not certain.
Think about it for another minute.
So that $20,000 included utilities.
I backed it out and then I added it back in, but they're paying for it now.
I'm not sure. I think you're gonna have to explain that one to me.
All right. So the reason for that is if it's a restaurant, their gas bill, their water bill, their hydro bill could be off the charts. If it's a computer place, you know, they with 20 servers in their electricity bills could be $50,000 a year for electricity. So by going to that's what I'm trying to do with Loyalist right now, Jordan. I've asked their lease is up in October, and I've asked them, look, I'm going to change the base rent a little bit. It was a gross rent, totally gross. We paid the utilities, but I'm asking them to pay the utilities from October 1st on and up the rent a little bit. I'm hoping they'll do that, and I think they will. And the reason is that protects you, the landlord, and as their representative, the property manager, just in case, say Loyalist they could move 10 servers in there tomorrow and just end up paying the electricity. We would. All right. Yep. So it gives you some protection. The reason that triple net leases are so powerful is you can put almost everything in the operating expenses and you get, you know, make out like a bandit, as I said, but also it protects you against property tax increases, snow removal increases, electricity, both the rate and the usage increases. So the goal is to do net leases. The goal is to have some percentage rent in there, so the more successful your tenant is, the more successful you are. Second best was semi-gross. And, you know, if you do a gross lease, make it short-term. A lot of, like Jennifer's lease is 3 years. And the Loyalist lease was either 2 or 3 years. And I wanted it short, you know, because I have to get people in there. I have to get people paying rent. You know, so when you have a brand new building, which is effectively what you and your dad have created there, we need to have some rent coming in. So you do whatever you do to get your first client in, but then you go from a gross lease to a semi-gross lease and hopefully to a net lease. Okay, so that's what my question is going to be. So with Jennifer, is she going strictly gross or is it a semi-gross? No, so we did with her, we got semi-gross. Okay. So she is going to pay base rent with some operating costs in that base. And she's going to pay her utilities on top. Great. Okay. I tried to get her to do a triple net lease, but you know, that was not, the discussions with Jennifer are not simple. You probably know that. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to send you this spreadsheet now. And it's important for you to you know, to sort of understand these concepts, because believe it or not, the triple net leasing stuff is going to come into residential at some point, because landlords are in places where you have rent control, like Ontario, landlords are really suffering. I mean, really suffering. I mean, there's a whole hell of a lot of them that just can't continue because, and there's going to be a lot of properties coming up for sale. Okay. All right. So that was triple net leasing. Now let's talk about the second thing on your list, which was how do you screen tenants? And we did talk a little bit about this, I think, but oh shoot, did I close it already? Maybe it's here. Yeah. So I think I sent you these forms, and any forms that you haven't got, Jordan, by the time we get through this, you just reach back to me and let me know which ones you don't have, and I'll find them for you. Okay. But this one I think I sent you. This is the lease application form for residential, right? Yeah. And you have this, right? I do, yeah. Yeah. So we get the names of the tenants, their email address, their cell numbers, their work numbers if they have them, where they're living now, their social insurance numbers, which you can use, you know, to or in the United States, social security numbers. So you can do some checking. This is new, driver license numbers. That's become incredibly important now to, you know, proof of identity, so that you don't have some terrorist maybe renting from you. And as you know, most people now know enough to check their own credit scores, which they can do for free. Anybody else in the building, and what is their relationship? One of my clients, I think I may have told you this, one of my clients rented a really nice executive home to a family from overseas. And he didn't, his realtor and his property manager didn't put in a limit to the number of tenants. He has 22 people living there now. Huh. Oh, yeah. The living room has bunk beds in it, right? I mean, you know, if you think about it, they're paying a decent rent for this in Ottawa. They're paying about $3,500 for the home, but they got 22 people in it, which means they're paying about $170 a month each. right?
Yeah, and it's gonna
They
be
just-
destroyed at the end.
Oh, it'll be, he'll have a repair bill that will be out, so, and he's mad at his realtor and his property manager. I said, well, I started coaching him after he did that deal. And I said, well, but you have to know this thing too, because I don't want you to get sued. Then you ask for references from their employer, previous landlord, personal reference. And it doesn't always work, as you know, because the lady that we were talking about earlier who might have to leave our building got good references. Never missed a payment, a rent payment, but now she's missed some. Emergency contact, remember why I put that in there?
Yep.
Yeah. Do they have a social presence? And you should Google them anyway. Do they have a website? And then these are questions that you ask, again, number of persons to be resident, what size of the building are you looking for? Do they need parking? Do they have pets? Are they smokers? Are there any other uses contemplated than residential? We talked about that as well, because if they're going to start a business there, they have to have your permission. And again, if it's a tech guy with 5 servers, you got to know that, because the utility bills will go they'll be out of hand. If they are going to start some kind of business, what type of business are they doing? And that's that. And then here's the commercial one, which is virtually the same. And again, there's be a few questions you might ask them. Have you ever been evicted? Are you good about returning your calls? Do you pay your bills on time? Ever been convicted of a crime? So these are really simple forms, but they really work. And you notice here, we always say, we, the undersigned, hereby authorize the landlord or the landlord's agent, which would be you, to run a credit check, background check, criminal employment reference check based on the information supplied. So that's pretty much.
That's your screening.
That's what I do for screening, yeah. And of course you interview them, but look, you and I and on this building downtown, we've done, I don't know, 12 leases or something like that. And we've got one that looks like it might fail, right? And so that is not unusual. You're going to have anywhere from 1 or 2% of your tenants fail to maybe as high as 10%. 10% is too high, but it's not going to be 0. Okay.
Okay, that's what kind of sparked that question, just to
Yep.
gain some insight into the screening process.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Okay, I'm going to send you this commercial leasing thing too. And I'm going to send you this little write-up of how to do commercial leasing, so you have it. Okay, that's coming to you as well. All right, so that was number 2 on your list. Okay. The next one I wanted to go over is your property management spreadsheets. And I hate to say it, but I might give you a little bit more work to do. Excuse me. I don't really have a great property management spreadsheet. I've got I've got hundreds, maybe even thousands of them on my computer. But I just before we actually got on the call, I fooled around a little bit. So what you want to have in a typical property management report is for each property, you want to know what the base rent is, what the additional rent is. That's what income is coming to you and the landlord. Are there any late fees or NSF checks? Checks, that's the American spelling. Right? Are you generating any income from parking, from laundry, from signage, / sponsorship maybe? Interest income. Sometimes you have to take tenant deposits and put them in interest-bearing accounts, so you might get a little bit of interest. There might be other income streams, which I'm sure there will be. Then you look at expenses: advertising, cleaning, insurance, maintenance, office expenses, property taxes, repairs and maintenance, supplies. That's usually office supplies, utilities, internet, probably cell phone too. That might be something. What are your accounting and bookkeeping costs? What is your property management costs? Are there any other expenses? And then what you want to have is you want to have another category, so you know what your expenses are, but you want to know what expenses you can recover from the tenant. It might be zero. If they're all gross leases, maybe it is zero, but it might not be. So you might be able to get a lot of these costs back. Then you need to show a rent roll, which says tenant, email address. You probably should have cell number too. Email address. What are they paying at base rent? What other payments or additional rent? Do they put down a rent deposit? You got to keep track of that. Those, you know that, right? Start date of the lease, end date. And you do that for every tenant. And then you have to have, you have to have something different, which is any capital expenditures or repairs and maintenance. You have to have a breakdown of that. So in many commercial situations and some residential, if you do a repair on something, it might be recoverable. In other words, it might be that something you can charge back to the tenant. So you have to know which space, which apartment, or which project or property address, what you are spending the money on, whether it's a repair and maintenance, which is different from a capital expenditure. Capital expenditure would be, for example, putting a new beam in the Burroughs building. That's going to be there hopefully for the next 100 years. That's a capital expenditure. It's treated differently than, say, unblocking a toilet.
Okay.
All right. And you've got to know who authorized it and whether it's recoverable or not. Okay.
Okay.
So these spreadsheets, my youngest son, Matthew, I don't know if you've ever met Matthew.
Yeah, I've met Matt.
This is what he does as a project manager and as a property manager, and his spreadsheets are incredible. I mean, they're incredibly detailed, maybe too much so, I don't know, possibly, but yours have to be somewhere between 1,000 columns long and 5 columns or 5 rows long and 1,000 rows. It should be more summary than anything else, because a typical landlord doesn't necessarily need to drill down that into every $100 that you spend. I'm going to send you this document too. So when you get into your property management, and you're going to do your first report, I am going to look at this. We'll do a spreadsheet together, but these are some of the items that I think that go in there. Well, we got a lot done in an hour and a half.
Covered a lot.
All right. Is there any? Do you have any other questions before we sign off?
I don't know.
Okay. There's one thing that I wanted to ask whether we have covered it or not. Have we done Airbnb arbitrage yet?
We haven't done it, no.
You know what it is, though, right?
I know that you've briefly touched on it. I think you briefly touched on it in our last meeting, but we haven't gone over it thoroughly. So
one of my clients is doing Airbnb arbitrage in Nashville, which is a great economy. And I just wanted to show you, maybe I showed you this last time, but I wanted to show you what his income was, earnings in July.
Wow.
He has to pay out significant amount of money to the owners of the properties and to Airbnb, of course. But he netted almost $116,000 last year. He's a Canadian guy from Toronto.
That's amazing.
So could you add Airbnb arbitrage to our next conversation? Because that's another wedge product for you. Okay. And do you know how it's a wedge product?
How?
I'm asking you to think about it.
I don't have an answer for you.
Okay. So The best alternative to a negotiated agreement is not to walk away, but maybe to offer some of the Workey services. But another one would be to offer Airbnb arbitrage. So let's say this landlord had a bungalow and he had 3 microsuites in the basement. And he's not really making a whole lot of money. Maybe he's renting them out for, I don't know, $600 each. So he's making $1,800, and the students are leaving at the end of April or May. So you might say, well, you know what? You don't want me to manage your portfolio yet. I get that. I haven't proven myself to you. How about you give me those 3 microsuites in the basement and let me put them on Airbnb for you?
Now,
And
would you lease those spaces regardless of your generated revenue? Or in this,
that would be up to you and to your client to do. There's 2 methods. One is simple. Look, we'll put them on Airbnb. Albrecht will keep 20% of the revenues, and you get 80%. Or I'll rent them from you. You're making $1,800. I'll rent it from you for $1,800, and if I can rent them out for $3,000, I'll make $1,000 or something like that a month. I would be very open with people. I prefer negotiations that are, that are almost open book, really. Because it really genders trust. Look, I'm quite happy to just give me those 3 microsuites. I'll put them on Airbnb for you, manage the hell out of them. You give me 20% of the revenues, I'm good. Or I'll just give you the same $1,800 and I'll put it on. And if I make $500 that month, I'm going to lose money. And if I make $3,000 that month, I'll make money, right?
Yeah.
So you have to decide. And those kind of agreements could be fairly short term, right? Because those suites are already furnished, like certainly Ali Alili with his microsuites. And our microsuites are all furnished, as you know. So they could be short-term rentals, they could be medium-term rentals. And arbitrage means you're paying, fixed rent to the landlord, and you're making the overage, but you're also responsibility for any losses.
Okay.
If you're afraid of the risk of that, you just settle for your 20% fee.
Yep. Makes sense.
All right. But put that on our list, because this particular individual in Toronto is really doing well. Now that's Nashville. Nashville's a little bit, probably more touristy than Belleville.
Yep, I will.
All right. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, see if you can track down Lindsay. I don't want her to leave, but if she doesn't pay her rent in the next 3 days, then you're gonna ask her to leave. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for everything, Jordan.
Yep, no problem. Take care.
Say hi to your dad too. Okay.
I will. Bye.